She never saw it coming. The lights blazed across Hollywood Boulevard as Aria Mitchell gripped her microphone, ready for another takedown interview. Her target: Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Her smirk said it all. This would be her masterpiece of mockery. But in the next 3 minutes, everything she built would crumble. One response from the most electrifying man in entertainment would transform her career forever. The night Hollywood learned about real strength. Aria Mitchell made her name by breaking celebrities. Not just interviewing them, destroying them. Her YouTube channel, Celebrity Reality Check, had racked up millions of views. Each video a masterclass in calculated humiliation. Her signature move: catching stars off guard at their most vulnerable moments, armed with research that would make TMZ blush. The network loved it. Ratings soared whenever she stepped in front of the camera, her perfectly styled blonde hair and designer suits masking the predator underneath. She'd reduced A-list actresses to tears, made Oscar winners storm off mid-interview, and ended more than a few publicist careers. Each takedown added another zero to her paycheck, another industry award to her shelf. Her most recent victim had been a young actor promoting his first leading role. She'd blindsided him with questions about his past struggle with addiction, twisting his words until he broke down on camera. The clip went viral. His movie tanked. But Aria's view count? Through the roof. Tonight was different. The premiere of Steel Heart, Dwayne Johnson's latest blockbuster, promised to be the biggest Hollywood event of the year. Aria had spent weeks preparing, digging through decades-old wrestling footage, interviewing former WWF extras, and crafting questions designed to cut deep. Her producer had warned her, The Rock wasn't like other targets. His media training was legendary, his charm unshakable. But Aria saw something else. A wrestler playing pretend in Hollywood. She smelled blood. The red carpet stretched before her like a crimson runway, camera flashes creating a strobe effect against the evening sky. Her crew had secured the perfect spot, just before the theater entrance. Stars would be tired after walking the gauntlet of press, their guards down. And there, at the far end, she spotted him. Dwayne Johnson moved through the crowd like a force of nature. His custom-tailored black suit couldn't quite contain those famous shoulders, and his million-dollar smile lit up every camera in range. Fans screamed his name, and he stopped for every selfie, every autograph. The other reporters shifted nervously as he approached. They knew what was coming. Aria's ambushes were notorious. Her cameraman gave the signal. They were live. Aria touched her earpiece, confirming the feed was clean. Her producer's voice crackled through. Remember, we need something viral. Make it hurt. She smiled, watching The Rock work his way closer. Everything was perfect. The lighting, the angle, the questions burning in her mind. Years of entertainment journalism had taught her every celebrity had a breaking point. Tonight, she would find The Rock's. What Aria didn't know was that Karma had been watching. And Karma, much like the man approaching her microphone, believed in paying back exactly what you put out into the world. In less than 5 minutes, her carefully constructed world of gotcha journalism would meet an immovable force. And for the first time in her career, Aria Mitchell would be the one left speechless. Aria gripped her microphone tighter as she watched her prey approach. The technical team had positioned 3 cameras strategically. One for her, one for The Rock, and one wide shot to capture the inevitable moment when her target would crack. Her sound engineer had placed additional mics in the backdrop, ready to catch every whisper, every frustrated breath. Behind her practiced smile, Aria ran through her ammunition one last time. The failed football career in Canada. The $7 in his pocket story he always mentioned. She'd found witnesses who contested that version of events. The nepotism angle of his wrestling career, riding his father's coattails. And her personal favorite, quotes from drama critics savaging his early acting performances. Each barb carefully selected, each fact twisted just enough to draw blood while maintaining plausible deniability. The crowd's energy shifted as Johnson worked the line. Aria observed his routine with clinical precision. He'd stop every few feet, crouch down to eye level with young fans, and give each person his full attention. Standard celebrity playbook: appear accessible, remain in control. But Aria knew better. Every star had a facade. Every facade had cracks. Her earpiece crackled. 5 minutes out, her producer whispered, "Remember, we need something big. The morning shows are already calling for footage." Arya nodded slightly. Her last viral moment had snagged 2 million views in 3 hours. This one would double that. The security team moved in formation around Johnson, creating a bubble of space. Arya noted how his eyes scanned each reporter he approached, reading body language, assessing threats. Old wrestling habit, she guessed. Or maybe he'd heard about her reputation. Good. Fear made better television. Her research team had compiled a psychological profile. Johnson's interviews followed patterns: deflect tension with humor, pivot to gratitude, emphasize hard work. But Arya had spotted something else in the footage. A micro-expression that flashed across his face whenever someone questioned his legitimacy. A split-second tell that revealed the insecurity beneath the swagger. Tonight, she would exploit that crack until it split wide open. The crowd's roar intensified. 10 feet away now. Arya's camera operator adjusted his focus. The lighting team tweaked their settings one final time. Harsh key lights ready to capture every twitch, every flinch. 9 feet. 8. 7. Johnson stopped to sign one last autograph. Arya watched him lean down, that famous smile never wavering as he posed for a photo with a young fan in a wheelchair. Perfect. She'd start soft, build rapport, then transition into the attack while he was still in compassionate mode. The bigger they were, the harder they fell. 6 feet. 5. 4. Arya felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the predator's high before the strike. Her questions weren't just designed to provoke. They were crafted to corner. Each one would build on the last, leaving no room for his usual charm offensive. By the time she reached her finale, he'd be trapped in a web of his own contradictions. 3 feet. 1. The Rock turned toward her microphone, that megawatt smile still in place. But something was different. His eyes. They weren't scanning anymore. They were fixed directly on hers, with an intensity that made her grip on the microphone falter for a fraction of a second. In that moment, Arya felt a flicker of something foreign. Something she hadn't experienced in years of ambushing celebrities. Oh. The Rock extended his hand, and Arya realized too late that she had miscalculated. She wasn't the predator tonight. She was about to become the prey. Arya switched on her signature smirk, the one that had launched 1,000 viral moments. Dwayne Johnson, Arya Mitchell from Entertainment Tonight. You look incredible. Those hours in the gym really paying off. Almost makes up for the hours you should have spent in acting classes. The crowd tensed. A few gasps rippled through the assembled journalists. But the Rock's smile never wavered. He released her hand and adjusted his cufflinks, a gesture so casual it almost masked its deliberateness. You've had quite a year, Arya pressed on. 3 blockbusters, 2 streaming series, and an energy drink empire. Not bad for someone who started out pretending to fight in spandex. Tell me, do you ever miss the days when all you had to do was fake punch people? The temperature around them seemed to drop 10 degrees. Other reporters lowered their microphones, sensing the storm brewing. Security staff shifted uncomfortably, but Johnson gave them a subtle hand signal to stay back. Speaking of fighting, Arya continued, her voice dripping with mock concern, I spoke to some interesting people from your wrestling days. They had fascinating stories about a young rookie who got pushed to the top because of his family name. Must be nice having a father in the business. Makes those dues everyone else had to pay optional, doesn't it? For a fraction of a second, something flickered in Johnson's eyes. Not anger, something else. Arya pressed her advantage, pulling out her phone. In fact, I have a quote here from one of your old colleagues. Would you like to hear what they really thought about The Rock's meteoric rise? The crowd had grown completely silent. Camera flashes ceased. Every eye, every lens focused on the unfolding drama. But instead of responding, Johnson did something unexpected. He laughed. Not his famous booming laugh from movies, but a quiet, knowing chuckle that made Arya's confidence waver. You know what's interesting, Arya? His voice carried effortlessly, filling the space without raising its volume. I watched your last 6 ambush interviews. Did my homework, just like you did yours. Saw how you cornered that young actor last month, twisted his recovery story into clickbait. Watched you make that actress cry by bringing up her divorced parents. Real powerful stuff. Arya's smirk froze. This wasn't the script. The Rock took a single step forward, his massive frame somehow managing to block out the chaos of the red carpet behind him. But here's what caught my attention. In every interview you go for the same thing, pain. You dig for trauma, find the weak spots, the old wounds. And I ask myself, what makes someone choose that path? What happens to a person that makes them want to hurt others for entertainment? The microphone felt slippery in Aria's grasp. She tried to interject, to regain control, but Johnson's words carried an authority that silenced her practiced deflections. So I did some more digging. Found your old articles from journalism school. Different tone back then. Stories about local heroes, community building, truth-telling. Had real heart. Then I found something interesting from 8 years ago. A story you pitched about corporate corruption. Got shut down, didn't it? Killed by advertisers. Must have hurt. Watching truth lose to money. Aria's face drained of color. Nobody knew about that story. She'd buried it. Deleted every trace. That's when it clicked, Johnson continued, his voice carrying a warmth that made his words even more devastating. You're not trying to expose truth anymore. You're trying to inflict the same pain you felt. Making others feel small because someone once made you feel small. And you're damn good at it. But here's the thing about pain, Aria. He gestured to the crowd, the cameras, the whole circus of Hollywood surrounding them. I didn't get here by avoiding pain. Those $7 in my pocket? Real. Those years struggling while people questioned my legitimacy? Real. Every setback, every criticism, every doubt, all real. But I learned something you haven't figured out yet. Pain can break you or it can transform you. It's all about what you choose to do with it. Aria felt her carefully constructed persona cracking. Her producer was screaming in her earpiece to cut away, but she stood frozen, transfixed by the truth she'd never wanted to face. So yes, I started in spandex. Yes, my father opened doors. And yes, some critics trashed my early performances. But while you were preparing to mock that journey, did you bother to ask why I keep telling those stories? Why I share my failures as openly as my successes? The rock smile returned, but this time it held something else. Compassion. It's because somewhere out there, someone's hitting rock bottom. Someone's being told they're not good enough. And maybe, just maybe, hearing that some wrestler who couldn't afford dinner once managed to turn it around. Maybe that gives them hope. But you wouldn't know about giving hope, would you, Aria? Too busy chasing clicks. The air around the red carpet crackled with tension. Aria's producer had gone silent in her earpiece. Her camera operator slowly lowered his equipment, caught in the gravity of the moment. But The Rock wasn't finished. He took another step forward, closing the distance between them until the microphone between them seemed like a fragile barrier. You know what the hardest part of transitioning from wrestling to acting was, Aria? It wasn't the critics. It wasn't the schedule. It wasn't even learning a whole new craft from scratch. It was letting go of the armor. In wrestling, you're always protected by your character. In acting, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be real. His words carried across the now silent crowd. Even the distant traffic seemed to have hushed. Phones raised high recorded every second, but Aria barely noticed them anymore. Her usual tactics lay in ruins around her, as useless as her scripted questions. 8 years ago, you wrote a story about worker exploitation in garment factories. You interviewed families, gathered evidence, tracked money trails. Real journalism. The kind that changes lives. Your editor killed it because 3 major advertisers threatened to pull out. That's when something broke in you, didn't it? Aria's hand trembled. The microphone picked up her shaky breath, broadcasting her unraveling to every live stream, every news feed. The Rock's voice softened, but his words carried even more weight. You had 2 choices then. Keep fighting for truth, or become what you hated. You chose to hurt people before they could hurt you. Started small little jabs in celebrity profiles, hints of scandal in red carpet coverage. But pain is addictive. Each takedown needed to be bigger than the last. More shock, more tears, more viral moments. Somewhere in the crowd, a child started crying. The Rock paused, his expression shifting as he glanced toward the sound. Without missing a beat, he pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to Aria. The gesture, so unexpected, so genuine, cracked something in her carefully maintained facade. But here's what you missed, Aria. Those same advertisers who killed your story? They can't stop you anymore. Independent journalism is thriving. Whistleblowers are breaking stories on social media. The truth finds a way. But you got stuck in revenge mode, so focused on punishing the system that you became its worst product. Other reporters had lowered their microphones, transformed from competitors into witnesses. Area felt the weight of their eyes, not with the usual professional jealousy, but with something closer to recognition. How many of them had their own killed stories? Their own moments of choosing between truth and survival? You're right about one thing, The Rock continued, his tone shifting to something more contemplative. I did benefit from my father's name. It opened doors. But you know what I learned behind those doors? Every advantage comes with responsibility. Every platform is a chance to lift others up or tear them down. You've got skill, Area. You've got reach. But you're using your power to make the world smaller, meaner. A security guard approached, probably concerned about the schedule, but stopped dead when The Rock raised his hand slightly. The entire premiere seemed suspended in amber, waiting. So here's what's going to happen next. This interview will go viral, but not for the reasons you planned. People will watch it because they see themselves in this moment. Everyone who's ever chosen fear over faith, pain over purpose. And maybe, just maybe, they'll realize it's never too late to change the story. He reached out and gently pushed Area's microphone down, the gesture both powerful and paternal. That old story you wrote. The one about the garment workers? The kids are grown now. Some of them went to college. One's studying journalism. I know because I found them. Their lives went on while you were stuck in that moment of betrayal. But here's the good news. Your story isn't over either. The crowd had grown, other celebrities pausing their red carpet walks to witness the exchange. But The Rock maintained the intimacy of the moment, speaking as if to Area alone. Tomorrow, your inbox will have 2 emails. One from those garment workers' families, willing to talk again. And one from my production company. Because that journalist who wanted to change the world? She's still in there. And I'm betting she's ready to come back out. Area Mitchell, the reporter who had made celebrities cry, who had ended careers with a single question, who had turned emotional warfare into an art form, stood speechless. In all her years of ambush interviews, she had prepared for every reaction. Anger, tears, walkouts. But she had never prepared for kindness. Never prepared for someone to see through her armor to the wounded truth beneath. The Rock's smile returned, not his movie star grin but something more genuine. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a premiere to attend. But Area, remember, rock bottom is just the foundation for what you build next. Time seemed to restart with a rush of sound. Camera shutters clicked rapidly, creating a symphony of mechanical whispers. Area stood rooted to her spot, the microphone hanging limply at her side, as The Rock made his way toward the theater entrance. The crowd parted before him, but their eyes weren't following his movement. They remained fixed on her. Her producer's voice finally crackled back to life in her earpiece, demanding she salvage the situation, get something usable, create controversy. For the first time in her career, Area reached up and pulled the earpiece out, letting it dangle down her shoulder. The constant stream of direction, the pulse of manufactured drama that had driven her for years, fell silent. A young reporter from a small local blog stepped forward, phone still recording. Area, would you like to respond to what Mr. Johnson said? The question carried no malice, no attempt to capitalize on her vulnerability. Just genuine curiosity. Area opened her mouth, but 8 years of crafted cynicism had evaporated, leaving her without her usual armor of sharp comebacks. Nearby, a group of entertainment reporters huddled, their whispered conversation carrying in the strange quiet that had descended. Did you know about her investigative piece? I heard rumors, but... Remember when she used to write those community spotlight stories? Their words swirled around her like autumn leaves, memories of a different version of herself she'd tried so hard to bury. Security began ushering the press line back into position as other celebrities approached, but nobody moved. The usual red carpet rhythm had been shattered. Area felt her phone buzzing frantically in her pocket. Undoubtedly her network executives wondering why their star interviewer was trending for all the wrong reasons. She left it unanswered. A warm hand touched her shoulder. Area turned to find Lisa, a veteran reporter she'd once looked up to, back when she'd first started. I remember that factory story, Lisa said quietly. I tried to run something similar at my old network. Got shut down too. We all have our scars. Area. But he's right. They don't have to define us. The words hit her like summer rain, gentle but impossible to ignore. Area looked down at her phone, now displaying notifications from every major social platform. Clips were already spreading, but not with the usual gleeful mockery reserved for takedown moments. Comments flooded in. This is what real leadership looks like. The Rock just taught a masterclass in turning pain into purpose. Watch how he helped instead of hurting. Her cameraman, Tony, who'd filmed every ambush interview for the past 5 years, cleared his throat. Boss, you should see this. He turned his camera display toward her. The footage wasn't the tight, harsh shot they usually use to capture celebrity discomfort. Instead, he'd pulled back, showing the whole scene. The Rock's body language, protective rather than confrontational. The crowd's transformation from spectators to participants in something profound. And Area herself, stripped of her carefully constructed persona, standing not in triumph but in possibility. A studio executive materialized at her elbow, smartphone in hand, already talking damage control. But as he rattled off viewing numbers and engagement metrics, Area noticed something strange. The clips weren't being tagged with her usual hashtags. Hashtag celeb takedown or hashtag Mitchell massacre. Instead, phrases like hashtag second chances and hashtag rockwise words dominated the trend lists. From the theater entrance, The Rock's voice carried one last time. Remember, Area. Sometimes the most powerful story is the one where the villain realizes they can be something else. He disappeared inside, leaving behind a red carpet transformed into something between a confession booth and a classroom. Area felt weight of the microphone in her hand. Her weapon of choice for so long. With deliberate care, she handed it to her cameraman. The network executive's voice rose in panic, but Area barely heard him. She walked to the edge of the press line where a young woman stood clutching a journalism student press pass. Here, Area said, unpinning her network credential and placing it in the student's trembling hands. I won't be needing this anymore. But maybe you will. Just remember what he said. Every platform is a chance to lift others up or tear them down. Choose wisely. As she walked away from the red carpet, Area pulled out her phone and opened a blank document. At the top, she typed, "The true cost of silence," revisiting the factory workers 8 years later. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before adding a subtitle, "A Story of Second Chances." Behind her, the premiere continued, celebrities posed, and cameras flashed. But something had shifted in the atmosphere of Hollywood Boulevard. Reporters clustered in small groups, sharing their own stories of killed pieces and compromised dreams. Veterans reached out to rookies, offering guidance instead of competition. The usual red carpet Shark Tank had transformed, however briefly, into a place of connection. And somewhere in the theater, The Rock smiled, knowing that sometimes the strongest move isn't throwing a punch, it's extending a hand. By sunrise, the video had reached 50 million views. Unlike typical viral celebrity confrontations, this one sparked something different. Morning shows replayed the clip not for its shock value, but as a catalyst for discussions about journalism ethics and personal redemption. Social media platforms, usually battlegrounds for controversy, transformed into forums for reflection as hashtag journalism with heart started trending worldwide. Area's network executives called an emergency meeting at dawn. They arrived armed with viewing statistics and advertiser concerns, ready to demand her resignation. Instead, they found her office empty, her personal items gone. On her desk lay a single envelope containing her resignation letter and a thumb drive labeled, "Stories That Matter." The thumb drive contained 8 years of buried investigations. Not just her garment factory expose, but dozens of other stories she'd abandoned in favor of celebrity takedowns. Stories about wage theft, environmental corruption, and community resilience. Each file meticulously researched, each narrative waiting for its moment of truth. Entertainment blogs scrambled to reframe their coverage. The same outlets that had celebrated Area's brutal interviewing style now published think pieces about responsible journalism. Celebrity publicists, who'd once warned their clients about her ambush tactics, shared stories of their own battles between integrity and survival in the entertainment machine. 3 days after the premiere, Dwayne Johnson's production company announced a new documentary series, Truth Tellers: The Stories Behind the Stories. The press release confirmed Area Mitchell as executive producer. The series would spotlight investigative journalists who chose truth over trends, impact over clicks. The first episode would feature the garment workers' families, their story finally reaching the audience it deserved. Area's former network tried to maintain their formula, assigning another reporter to ambush interviews. But audiences had changed. Comment sections filled with comparisons to The Rock's approach, pushing for more substance, less sensationalism. Ratings for gotcha segments plummeted. Within weeks, the network announced a new direction in their entertainment coverage. Independent journalists began sharing their killed stories online, tagging them with #RockBottom2Rebuild. A flood of suppressed investigations emerged. Stories about political corruption, corporate malfeasance, and systemic injustice. The movement sparked crowdfunding campaigns to support independent investigative journalism platforms. The garment workers' children, now adults, appeared on several news programs. They spoke about watching their parents fight for better conditions, about carrying those lessons into their own careers. One young woman, now studying journalism, tearfully thanked The Rock for bringing their story back into the light. "Sometimes," she said, "it takes someone strong to remind us why we started fighting in the first place." Other celebrities began changing how they handled aggressive interviews. Instead of walking away or fighting back, many followed The Rock's example, turning confrontation into conversation, meeting hostility with understanding. Red carpet culture shifted subtly but significantly. The appetite for takedowns diminished, replaced by hunger for authentic connection. Media training programs at journalism schools incorporated the video into their curriculum. Students analyzed not just The Rock's response, but the complex factors that had driven Area's evolution from investigative journalist to ambush interviewer. Discussions about ethics expanded beyond traditional right and wrong into nuanced explorations of redemption and responsibility. The Rock himself said little about the incident, true to his pattern of letting actions speak louder than words. But in every interview that followed, he made time to ask reporters about their own stories, their own dreams beyond the entertainment beat. His premier red carpets became known as places where young journalists could find mentorship, not mockery. Area's transformation sparked a broader conversation about mental health in journalism. Reporters began sharing stories about the toll of compromise, the trauma of buried truths, the weight of choosing between career survival and moral conviction. Support networks emerged, offering resources for journalists struggling to maintain their integrity in a challenging industry. 8 weeks after the incident, Area's first investigative piece in 8 years went live. A comprehensive follow-up on the garment factory story, co-published across multiple platforms. The story didn't just update the original investigation. It examined how systemic pressure silences important voices and the courage required to speak up again. The piece ended with a simple dedication: "For everyone at rock bottom, your foundation is waiting." 1 year after the red carpet confrontation, Area Mitchell stood at a podium accepting the International Investigative Journalism Award. The garment factory story had grown into a global investigation, exposing labor violations across 3 continents. But it wasn't just the story that had evolved. Area herself had become a symbol of professional redemption. Her documentary series with The Rock's production company had just wrapped its first season, highlighting journalists who chose courage over convenience. Each episode paired veteran reporters with young journalists, creating mentorship chains that stretched across generations. The series finale featured Area returning to Entertainment Tonight, not for an ambush, but to talk with celebrity reporters about balancing entertainment coverage with substance. The network that once celebrated her takedowns had undergone its own transformation. Their entertainment division now focused on artists' creative journeys and humanitarian work. Rating didn't suffer, they soared. Audiences, it turned out, craved authenticity more than conflict. The Rock's influence extended beyond that one moment of intervention. His production company launched a journalism scholarship program, specifically targeting students from underserved communities. The first class of scholars included the daughter of one of the original garment workers, completing a circle that began with a killed story 8 years ago. Area's old YouTube channel, Celebrity Reality Check, remained online as a teaching tool. Journalism professors used it to demonstrate the contrast between exploitation and investigation. Next to each old takedown video, Area added a new interview, this time having honest conversations with those same celebrities about the impact of ambush journalism on their mental health. The press line culture transformed. Red carpet interviews became opportunities for meaningful exchange rather than gotcha moments. Reporters who attempted old-style ambush tactics found themselves gently but firmly redirected by their peers. The industry had learned that true strength lay in lifting others up, not tearing them down. Sometimes the most powerful stories aren't about the falls, but the rises that follow. When The Rock met Area Mitchell on that red carpet, he didn't just stop a takedown interview. He demonstrated how leadership can transform pain into purpose. One moment of compassion sparked a revolution in entertainment journalism, proving that even the most entrenched systems can change when someone is brave enough to choose understanding over anger. Area's journey from attack journalist to advocate for truth showed that rock bottom isn't a destination. It's a foundation. The entertainment industry learned that authenticity draws bigger audiences than artifice. Young journalists discovered that integrity and success aren't mutually exclusive. And somewhere in Hollywood, a simple red carpet moment became a masterclass in the power of meeting darkness with light. In the end, The Rock's greatest feat wasn't in any movie or wrestling ring. It was in seeing the hurt behind the hostility, and choosing to heal rather than harm. In doing so, he reminded everyone watching that the most electrifying moments in life don't come from tearing others down, but from helping them rise.